Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hello, I'm Larry.
Hi, I'm Jesi.
I'm Tori.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be discussing a Frank O'Hara poem. This is for you, Don Levy, one of our very loyal viewers. And this is a discussion from your all-time favorite poet. The poem that we're going to be talking about is a true account of talking to the sun at Fire Island. And the discussion starter I wanted to start with had to do with the inspiration to this particular poem. In this poem, the sun brings about another meeting he had with another poet, Vladimir Mayakovsky, and how he brought about ideas of futurism in Russia. In what way do you feel that the sun may be inspiring the poet in this poem to take action?
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I just really liked, first of all, from a base standpoint, the connotation that comes along with the sun. Usually you think God, gods or something holy, and the casual tone that is paired with the two of them talking, like, hey, what's up, Willie Wake? Well, that other poet woke up faster, but it's okay, I'm going to talk to you anyway. Like, I really loved that. So kind of that, a more positive spin on things. And I have a couple of quotes that would kind of further support what I'm saying here. Is he says, you're okay, you're different, or just keep on like I do and pay no attention. So he's saying to this poet, like, don't worry what others think. At the very least, I'm reading your poetry, and that's all that matters. So it's a very affirming conversation that he has with this poet. It's a very positive one. So I think it's something that from a written standpoint, writing kind of almost to yourself, kind of almost to the audience, saying, it doesn't matter what other people think, keep on doing what you're doing and you're going to be just fine.
In order to kind of, expand on that a little bit, I actually got a feeling of a little bit of conceitedness from him, just because, and I mean...
So you don't think the sun actually talked to him?
Yeah, I don't think a ball of
fire
was just like, hey, what up?
So you don't think this is actually a true account?
Maybe not a true account.
You calling him a liar?
Depends on how you define
You heard it here
account.
first. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just kind of saying, like, in a way, he said, hey, I'm the sun, and I spoke to this other poet, and now I'm talking to you, and I think your poems are great. And to me, that just kind of gave off a feeling of,
Interesting.
Like conceitedness a little bit. And then following that, when he basically said, hey, just do you in a sort of way. I'm up here, everybody complains about me and my weather all the time. People are going to complain about you, so just do whatever you want. So it kind of basically told me that the author is going to do whatever he wants, and he knows he's great at doing whatever he wants, and he's going to keep doing it. And to me, and I don't want to say conceited in a bad sort of way, but just in a... He knows he's good.
It's
so
a confident kind of way.
Yeah, and a confident, yeah.
I think pulling from the imagery of, the sun, also kind of playing with that, the confounding, the sun tapped on your window and woke you up one morning.
It's
so it's kind of
the
absurdity of that imagery and paired and juxtaposed with this fact. He's like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, and I think that's where I got the kind of the feeling from, because it's like of all things that he could have said to tap on his window, the sun, the center of our solar system,
exactly.
Just kind of, hey, sup, I like your poems.
But he himself, the poet, is a very interesting individual, and if you look at the lifestyle he led, being in doubt with oneself, calling into question all of the choices that he made along the way throughout life, you can understand kind of almost where this affirming poem came from, where he may have had some self-reflection, feeling like, maybe I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, and then having, this imaginary sense.
And that's why I said
exactly
no way a bad thing.
Your sense of enlightenment and the ability to make a difference starts from within.
Exactly.
And I think that was his encounter with the sun was an epiphany, per se.
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying, it's in no way a bad thing.
No.
It's just something, I felt like the first thing that stood out to me was that conceitedness, that confidence.
So what past confidence into
I think on first glance, yes, but when you look deeper into it, there's the sun is his interaction with the sun is completely symbolic. Because O'Hara he was known for being autobiographical with what he wrote. He wrote a lot about, not necessarily himself, but about New York itself. Fire Island is the largest island off of Long Island in New York.
Also, it has a very interesting connotation. The location itself is tightly linked to like the gay community. It was like the
Frank O'Hara
getaway.
was he was gay.
Yeah. Besides that, but just the location in and of itself is the fact that like if you mention Fire Island, especially back then, it was where like the lesbians and the LGBTQ community basically would go, and it was kind of their escape from like the heteros. Like,
And that's where he died too.
Yeah.
He got into some automobile accident.
a car hit him. What, like a couple years later after this poem was written? It was a short time afterwards.
It was this is one of his later poems.
Yeah.
But it was a few years after.
It's kind of interesting
Yeah.
because it doesn't he say in the
He died
poem
from
like the sun calls and he goes, "Don't worry, they'll be calling for you too."
Mhm.
Yeah,
And,
soon
like-
you'll be here. Don't worry about what they're saying up there with me. Like you'll be talking to them
Oh,
soon
that's
enough.
kind of
Yeah, and that's the chilling
When you look
part.
at
is it's almost kind
Mayakovsky,
of like,
it's even
prophetic.
creepier.
Oh yeah.
Because Mayakovsky was a Russian futurist who he was right at the right in the coming days of the rise of communism. He was a futurist as someone that embraces the modern lifestyle, modern technology, modern politics, modern ways, and Mayakovsky, he and a lot of others saw a decline when Lenin died, Trotsky was chased out, and Stalin took over. Because Stalin became a communist leader, and Mayakovsky ended up committing suicide.
which makes it very funny because the sun says it's easier to talk to you out here without having to squeeze in between the two buildings, kind of almost referencing like when you're in the city with all of the hullabaloo and it's very hard
as
to
much
catch
as you. Love
yeah,
Manhattan, I
yeah.
can't get to you.
Precisely. So I find that very interesting. Where you think of New York City and Manhattan and all those different areas there. You think of like progress and future and industry, but where he's in.
And in a way,
Ireland.
you can even kind of like how you said how the sun generally tends to symbolize gods and stuff. If you look at it from kind of
a divinity of some
yeah.
sort or another.
If you look at it from a religious perspective too, a lot of people who are big churchgoers, will say it's the technology now is drawing us away from our spiritual side. It's drawing us away from our faith. And so you can even look at it from that point of view, saying, okay, here you're away from the city, away from the progress, away from the technology.
And in general,
I can
the
finally talk to
lifestyles
you.
that we live are so frenetic that having that moment, being able to go find that quiet moment. So it's kind of again that self-affirming and like eureka moment of being able to say, I have
Which
to
is
breathe and taking a moment
Probably
for
how
yourself.
he found his confidence, like you
Exactly.
said, because he
Yeah.
got away from everything. So.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep, I would say that's his sense of solace and enlightenment. But this particular poem was inspired by Mayakovsky's own poem that was very similar, called An Extraordinary Adventure Which Happened to Me, Vladimir Mayakovsky, One Summer in the Country.
That's a catchy one.
That's quite tight.
That's a catchy
It is a catchy, and I read the poem itself, and it had to. I think the difference was that Mayakovsky was far more aggressive and confident with his. If you're saying that O'Hara was conceited, you can take that and
You would have
multiply.
been snooty then.
Yeah, multiply it by 10 or 100, and you'll get this poem in particular.
Something else that I really like is O'Hara's voice is inherent here.
Mhm.
That the poem is written. If I read a couple of other poems, I kind of went down that rabbit hole and read a bunch of other stuff by him, and it's very much his own tone,
Yeah.
which is kind of almost fun. Is that tongue-in-cheek, superimposing? Sorry, I couldn't think of the word for a second. That of his own voice onto this divine abstract thought of the sun coming and talking to him, be like, hey, you're okay. And if you look at all the other poems, it's very similar to how he speaks too, which I guess if a god were to come and talk to me, probably would sound just like me too, because that's more of a something that you can process. So I just like that little, all the way down to the use of the page and the way that he spells things out he doesn't change that at any way. It's very much in line with all the other poems.
Yeah, his most famous collection is the lunch poems, and those seem very casual. Probably the one that's most
Love that. I
noteworthy
love the
is
conversational
having a
aspect
talk
to
with
this.
him. Yeah, it is very conversational.
Yeah, I don't know. I read it. I have no interest in reading anything else by him based on that. It's just like, whatever.
What made it whatever?
Yeah, nothing. There's nothing in it. It's like, what's he saying? The son talked to him and said nothing. Said, "I like Africa. Bye. I gotta go now."
Yeah, you pull on some interesting parts there.
You looked at all the things he said.
All the
I like
parts that don't make any sense. But yeah, no, he was also very influenced by jazz. So knowing his background kind of almost helps.
That's when the beats were
poems.
heavy. They had a heavy influence.
Yeah, so like if you look at this and be like, oh, okay, I can kind of understand this free flow of words kind of almost matches with that more expressionist. I can't
got
talk.
this.
I'm done. I
got
got this.
this.
Expressionistic viewpoint where things didn't follow the
Believed in
rules.
you.
Thank you.
Well, it's
Nailed
not
it.
even about rules. It's just about like what is it? It's nothing. There's nothing there. There's nothing happening.
And I understand what you're saying, and I feel like that's why I felt he was coming across as conceited, because it's like, hey, the son just randomly came down and said, hey, I like your stuff, I'm gonna go set now. Like,
By the way,
the
I
son
like Africa.
came out of nowhere
I'm
and
gonna do
said,
my
hey,
thing. Bye.
I like your stuff. And that's where I think like the conceitedness came from to me. The only thing that and actually I noticed it here in your notes too, darkly he rose, and then I slept like just before that when he was saying
Loved
they're
that line.
calling
I had to
for
write
you.
it down. I was like, I don't know,
It's a great
sticks.
line.
Darkly heroes, and just the juxtaposition of a dark sun, like that just doesn't.
Oh, I
make
loved
sense.
that, but the line just before that, like when he's saying that they're calling for you, I did kind of sit and think on that, like who's calling for him? Who's
Very
calling for him?
ominous,
That's
yeah.
also calling on the sun, and that's why I kind of found it interesting when you said that he died just
Yeah, when I was
not
doing
long
research
after
on this
this.
poem,
There's
somebody was saying
a
it's
great
almost
sense of
prophetic.
suspicion, too.
Yeah, but until you guys had mentioned that he died not too long after this poem, to me that really didn't make too much sense to me. And the only reason why I
You
made
didn't
sense,
know that when you wrote it.
yeah,
No, and
obviously
that's
he
what's
did
funny
it,
is
and
it's
that's
like
why I'm
oddly
like,
prophetic. Like,
Yeah.
There's a
it's
great
very
sense of
weird.
suspicion because they didn't. There was somebody that got away with somebody that was under suspicion, but his charges were dropped.
Suspicion move.
Manslaughter, right?
Yeah, it was manslaughter.
Because I believe it was like he was in a car with somebody and then got dropped off or something to that effect, and the person lost control of the vehicle. I may be marring the details, but long story short,
but
he
even
was
so,
not in
if you
control of
try
the
to
car.
think of it from his point of view, what could he have possibly meant by saying who's calling, they're calling on you too?
And it
Who's
kind of
calling
almost
on him and the sun?
Exactly. It's this
And-
weird twist where you have this very positive poem where he's talking to the sun, and then all of a sudden at the end, it's this very
I have to set now.
thought-provoking
Yeah.
moment where it's a silent beat where he says, darkly he rose and then I slept. And it's like, what does that, it kind of almost puts this weird spin on, like he
It
went back to
does.
sleep and processed what just happened. So
Mhm.
it could have almost been a fever dream. He didn't actually talk to the sun, he just dreamt it.
Aha! I knew he didn't know about his son. I knew he was not being
I knew
honest.
he was drinking too
symbolic.
much Coca-Cola. Drinking too much Coca-Cola.
He's drinking that soda.
Already. Do you have any final thoughts?
Oh, man. Nah,
Yeah,
I mean, we covered it.
Ready?
it was a good poem, and I think we touched base on pretty much all of it.
I would say so. Not that much. I got this from a collection of the Norton Anthology of American Literature, Volume E, which is since 1945. But I will probably have to look into an actual collection of O'Hara's poetry. I
There's some
don't.
online. There's some archives online. That's where I found that version of it. Good stuff.
Yeah, I would say so. I want to get a complete collection of the next closest thing to it, but I'll have to see where I can get as far as that goes. Be sure to join us next time for another episode of The Tori Gladiators. For now, keep reading.